Hey, it's Orit Krug, and today I want to tell you a story about this one time when I seriously schooled this psychiatrist and this social worker and all the mental health workers on our treatment team, who we were all taking care of this one client who they thought she was regressing, she was getting worse, her behaviors were getting worse. And I had to send them a really thorough email about why, in fact, the opposite was true. And she was showing the exact signs of getting better and healing from her trauma. So this is for you if you've ever felt misunderstood or honestly screwed by the mental health system. It's really sad and frustrating about what these mental health clinicians don't actually know and how much they project their own crap onto other people. And I'm not here to try to hate on mental health workers in general, but I worked in a psychiatric hospital, and I worked in several different psychiatric treatment centers and institutions. And there is a lot of lack of training that I see in psychiatrists, even in social workers, like the people who are the main caregivers for, in my case, people who have just attempted to end their lives, people who are on the edge of, living and considering or have attempted death, because that's how hard that's how difficult it is to live with their trauma. So it's really disheartening to to see that maybe you've had this experience, you've gotten the wrong information, you've been misdiagnosed, you've just been told to take pills, and maybe that's given some relief, but it hasn't made things better, and you don't want to be on sleeping pills for the rest of your life. I want you to know there is another way, and there's a better way. So let me tell you a little bit about this client that I worked with. She was and I'm going to do this in a way that doesn't really give away who she is. But she's an adolescent when we worked together, and she experienced severe trauma and neglect in her childhood. And it's just tragic. Like, you wouldn't believe the kinds of things that some people really go through in their lives. So she was in the system already for a little bit by the time that I worked with her one-on-one in individual dance movement therapy. And what happened was she had, so if you've been following me, you know that there's fight, flight, freeze, shut down, and collapse, right? So she was experiencing the collapse. She fainted all the time, and there was no medical reasoning behind why she fainted. But she fainted every time there was a stressor or a trigger in her environment. Everything was fine. Like, she had no medical diagnoses for this. So this was actually a trauma response, because what happens is when fight or flight doesn't feel safe enough, when even freeze, which is the next more primitive response, when freeze doesn't feel like it's going to save your life, you go down to collapse and fainting and basically playing dead. It is the most ancient, severe response that other animals still do, that we still do if we don't feel safe going into a nervous system. Basically, like, if you're out in the wild and you feel like you're not going to survive if you fight this wild animal, or if you run away, you're not going to outrun them, and you're not going to survive even if you freeze up and like make yourself really tense and unappetizing to eat. Your last resort, this all happens in like a snap of a finger, your last resort is to play dead. So this was what was going on for her. She had such severe trauma and abuse and neglect in her life that the only way her nervous system could cope was if she played dead. That was the only way she felt safe. And it was the tiniest triggers in her life, in her environment, and specifically in our work together in the psychiatric hospital. So as we worked together through movement, through dance, through play, like really giving her these essential experiences in rewiring her nervous system and expanding her window of tolerance for certain triggers. This was what was happening, that the psychiatrist and social worker and her mental health team saw that she was getting worse and her behaviors were getting worse. When I was like, oh my God, she's improving, like she's doing so much better. But you would never know it on the outside, because what was going on was that she was fainting less, right? She was completely collapsing and surrendering a lot less. And she was having more aggressive outbursts on her unit with her peers. She was getting into more fights. She was yelling more. We had to hold her back and restrain her at times. She was just getting more outwardly aggressive. So what did her psychiatrist say? Put her on more meds, right? What did her social worker say? She's doing worse, like this isn't getting better. And they were punishing her more. They were restraining her. I don't even want to get into all those mental health dynamics that are unethical, but they were like, she's getting worse. And I was getting sick of it. And I was trying to tell the team that actually she was getting better. And there was such a lack of education about trauma and rewiring your nervous system and primal responses, trauma responses, that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write a really thorough email with, backing this up with resources. And I was saying, look, I know she's having more aggressive outbursts. She's getting into more fights with her peers, but that's not a sign of getting worse. What's happening is because she has never in her life felt safe to outwardly express her emotions at all. And her nervous system has never felt safe to cope in the fight or flight response, right? Because this is what was going on. Her coping skills were so ancient and primitive and dysfunctional that she would just faint. But actually, she was now moving up the hierarchy of responses where she could feel safe to fight, right? So it looked like it was getting worse. It looked like she was getting more aggressive. But if you tend to freeze with your partner, let's say, whenever there's confrontation, whenever there's conflict, and you just freeze and you can't speak up, that's a sign of a nervous system reaction. If you start healing your trauma, that isn't just going to be like poof, that whole thing is gone. What's going to happen is this is the progression of rewiring your nervous system. You used to freeze and unable to speak up. The next step, what's going to happen is that you're going to start speaking up more assertively, firmly, if you're doing the work in the right way, right? So your body only feels comfortable freezing, but as you heal your trauma and rewire your nervous system, now your body feels comfortable being in that fight-flight place. Now it feels comfortable being in that sympathetic activation space of your nervous system so that you can express anger, so that you can be assertive, so that you can speak up. The problem is, which is one of the issues that happened with this client of ours in the past, was at the psych facility, gosh, it's like, if you've ever worked at one, it's not as bad as they say, like you see in the movies, let's say, but there's still, it's still kind of a packed place with not enough mental health support. As you can see, people have been uneducated or misinformed the way they've learned about trauma. And so she wasn't, her healing and her growth wasn't being contained well enough in kind of like the general setting and environment on her unit. So she was starting to fight, but there wasn't enough support to contain all of that and help her regulate to actually go into a fight response, but without the like really huge outwardly aggressiveness. Just because in order for you to rewire your nervous system to go from, let's say, fainting or freezing to speaking up now to your partner through conflict, you also need a contained space where now you can teach your body how to handle that change in yourself. And so what we do, and what I helped her do and what I do with my clients now is that with that neurophysiological shift, that state shift, I also teach her physical body how to modulate that, how to regulate that, so that she's taking that energy and expressing her frustration without wiling out, without getting, without losing her ish, or without losing your stuff. I'm deciding if I should curse or not, but I'll keep it PG here. So this was the issue, and I taught them a lot that day, where they're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. She's not getting worse, she's actually getting better. So if you've ever been misunderstood, if you've experienced trauma, oh, there's a lot of comments here, I'll get back to that in a second. If you've ever experienced trauma and you have been told that you're getting worse, you need more medication, you need to stay on sleep meds forever in order to sleep, that is bull. Clearly, I'm very passionate about this. That is not true. Your nervous system has to understand and has to learn how to regulate itself to the point of getting to that rest and digest place, right? That calm space, so that you can sleep peacefully, so that you can relax. Your nervous system will naturally have to shift states, to go from a place of freezing and not speaking up to feeling comfortable and safe speaking up and being in that activated place. This is what creates really great sex. This is what creates really fun play with your partner, with your family. And at the same time, understanding how to regulate through that, so you expand your window of tolerance to speak up firmly without losing it. So let me just look at the comments here. Hey, yeah. I don't know, now I'm like reading them all through and I don't know when you commented, but yeah, I mean, increasing the capacity, it's not always gonna look like, increasing her capacity to go from fainting, or increasing your capacity to go from freezing up and not speaking up to speaking up and being in your power. It's not going to always look a certain way. Everybody is different. Every person's body is unique. And if you're in the right container and you're doing this work in the right container of relationship and movement, and in a relationship with a professional who can guide you and support you to co-regulate through these responses, then that's what it's gonna look like. You're gonna feel more of that drive and that activation, and that's a good thing. That's what you've been missing your whole life, right? I work with so many women who were never allowed to be angry, who were never allowed to express frustration, or be in that activated mode when they were younger. So they've had to repress it their whole lives, and now they wonder why they feel why they feel numb inside, or why they can't connect to like a drive, or why they feel unmotivated, why they can't follow through on their dreams. If you, let's say you procrastinate and, as well as not speaking up, you're not lazy, you're not a procrastinator. I don't believe in those identifications. Your nervous system does not know how to be in an activated mode. We need the activation without the fear in order to get stuff done, in order to speak up, in order to feel powerful, start a really profitable business, and keep showing up all the time. So this was a huge lesson that I learned, and also an inspiration for you to, if you've gotten messages from the mental health system that don't feel right, that have only made things worse for you, it's not your fault. They should have known better. You didn't get the right information. And as long as you're human, you have 100% the neural capacity to rewire your nervous system into, from a freeze, from an unhealthy, unregulated place to one of deep love and connection and being in your power, so that you can have the relationships and the life that you really desire and deserve. And even if, maybe you're at this place where you're like, yeah, I've been through so many different psychiatrists, psychologists, etc., and it hasn't helped, this is why. This is the reason why. It's not because you're damaged or broken. Again, you are 100% neurophysiologically capable of rewiring your nervous system for love and connection and happiness and success. Just like this client who went through unspeakable abuse, I saw right in very front of my eyes, through our work together and through the helpful clinicians in the hospital, that she turned her life around. She stopped fainting for the most part. And she became this like powerful little diva, because that was, she was like into like Nicki Minaj and Beyonce. We moved together, but she became this powerful little diva who could speak up for herself without losing it. So whatever your version of that is, you can do the same. And if you'd like to understand how you can do the same, I would love to walk you through the steps that it'll take for you to rewire your nervous system and break those unhealthy patterns so that you can have the connection and life that you really desire and deserve. So I want to invite you to book a free and obligation-free relationship review with me. I will put that link in the headlines. And yeah, let's chat. You know, this is no obligation, no catch. We'll just map out these steps that you need to take in order to achieve what my client has achieved, what our clients achieve now in our embodiment coaching. And whether you decide to take the next steps with us or not, you'll still leave with knowing the exact steps that you need to take next in your relationship and in your life, and drop all the stuff that, you know, the wrong information or the ideas that have been misleading or unhelpful to you by other mental health practitioners. So I invite you to book a call with me to get to the bottom of what's really going on and how you can really improve without having to depend on medications or be in therapy for the rest of your life. So book a call, and I can't wait to chat with you. Bye.